This is about how much marijuana public welfare recipients smoked on the taxpayers' dime just last year. 17 pounds worth of weed. Police and witnesses do agree on one thing, that a suspected drug user had a white sock and he stuffed it in his mouth just as narcotics agents were making an arrest here in this parking lot at 5th and Federal. Fox 31 problem solvers built an inmate transport cage and rented a certified test dummy. We handcuffed her up, didn't put the seatbelt on, and then asked experts to analyze what will happen when a deputy hits the brakes. This stockpile of vials and syringes represent the number of Toradol injections that a single Colorado university purchased during just one football season. Some injured football players consider it a magic potion that helps them play through the pain. Others consider it a dangerous snake oil.
Dead sprint!
It's only 5:30 in the morning.
Move, dig!
And already former Bronco and Colorado Buffalo lineman Matt McChesney's voice is getting hoarse.
Get it up!
At his gym 6-0, it's tough love as he trains some of this state's best high school football players for the rigors of big-time college sport.
Faster!
He preaches physical.
Pick it up or we're just going to keep running.
And mental toughness.
Don't worry, we can do this all day. Go!
And refuses to shy away from telling the truth about the ugly expectation of playing through injuries.
You better find a way to take care of yourself, because if you don't, you're just going to be an old broke-down cripple.
With the Broncos, Jets, Dolphins, and while at the University of Colorado in 2003, McChesney says he was shot up with Toradol or its generic equivalent ketorolac at least 100 times, shortening his career.
Get a shot in your butt cheek before a game. You feel like frickin' Superman when you walk on the field. Everything's numb, you feel great. After the game, when you wake up the next day, you feel like you got hit like a Mack truck because it hides everything. So what do? You go get another shot.
Based on our extensive review of thousands of painkiller prescription invoices from CU, Colorado State, and Northern Colorado, McChesney's young prospects will likely be offered similar help with their pain when they get to college. In 2014, Colorado State Athletics ordered 25 vials of ketorolac 3 times, including an overnight shipment the day the Rams played the Utah State Aggies in October. For months, CSU refused to answer our questions about game day Toradol use and its distribution of narcotics to players, so we headed to the Rams' spring football scrimmage. You'll bring him back, you promise? Media relations staff physically escorted players away from our cameras and prevented new athletic director Joe Parker from speaking to us about painkillers. However, that interference didn't protect first-year head football coach Mike Bobo. What are your thoughts on the use of Toradol to get injured players back on the field quicker here at CSU?
Yeah, you have to ask our team doctors about that. They handle that, and we don't use Toradol.
They did last year quite a bit, about 75 vials. Do you have your own philosophy on it?
I trust the doctor's judgment on things.
Although Coach Bobo was upset with our questions, his program isn't the only one buying up pain-killing medications. During the 2013 football season, Northern Colorado administered Toradol to 12 athletes participating in football who received a combined total of 29 injections. The Bears' written policy regarding the use of Toradol or ketorolac says for optimal results, injections should be given 1 hour prior to the start of the competition. From 2011 to 2014, the University of Colorado in Boulder ordered 56 vials and 999 tablets of ketorolac. That, along with thousands of injections of numbing agents like lidocaine and bupivacaine.
The players can't make that decision. We have to help guide them.
Dr. Eric McCarty is team physician. He defends the program's use of painkillers and anti-inflammatories, while at the same time admitting there is a growing concern and controversy over Toradol's use.
Ever since I've been here at Colorado, we've never really used it that much. Sure, we injected some, but not that much. Whereas I've seen a lot of programs that have really utilized it and injected people, sometimes a dozen players a game.
Like at the University of Southern California, former star Armand Armstead recently settled a landmark civil case saying repeated Toradol injections sent him into cardiac arrest. And the NFL has also been sued by players claiming Toradol worsens concussions.
Floats one out on the right flat. Nate Jackson has it.
Former Denver Bronco tight end Nate Jackson knows all about playing while injured.
Juggled by Jackson as he got belted.
In his book, Slow Getting Up, Jackson wrote about the dangers of the widespread use of pharmaceuticals in NFL locker rooms. Do you remember the first time you saw Toradol?
At one point I looked up and I needed it, and I was taking it every week. I don't remember the first time I had it. I don't remember the first time I saw it. It was just one more thing, because guys are constantly getting pumped full of other pills.
Jackson says Toradol was a mainstay for most players, and it worked so well that major college sports programs started taking notice.
It's just a product of this NFL mentality just trickling down, and it's going to college, and pretty soon you're going to see Toradol in high school. And pretty soon you're going to see Toradol in Pop Warner.
Faster and harder, let's go!
For Matt McChesney, that's a sickening notion.
You either tape it, brace it, and shoot it, or you go home.
That needs to change before more of these young athletes' careers are destroyed. A spokesperson for the Air Force Academy tells me Toradol injections have been used for years on athletes there, but that recent lawsuits and concerns over students' health have put a stop to it. Our federal records requests, which might back up that claim, have so far been unfulfilled. We only counted incidents where police officers were at fault and were disciplined. Still, just in the past 3 years, Denver police racked up 300 of those cases. Just to put it in perspective, that would be enough wrecked cars to fill this auto graveyard.
I literally didn't see until I hit. Just right on. It was just so quick, so fast. Yeah, it was scary.
The first moment after Shane McHale slammed into the side of a police cruiser, he wondered how he survived. His next thought, however, was he was screwed.
I remember this guy runs up to me and says, "Dude, you just hit a cop." And I look, and there's a cop car in the ditch area. And I was just thinking to myself, well, I just lost the game of life.
But accident investigators cleared McHale of any blame. The final report says he had the green light, was sober, and driving a Nissan Altima down Corona Street within the speed limit. Denver police officer Chad Cinema admitted he was momentarily distracted and not on an emergency call.
You see cops all the time driving around kind of above the law kind of thing, and it's just kind of stupid, especially after that happens. Like, maybe you guys should drive like the rest of us.
Fox 31 Denver discovered this was the officer's second at-fault crash within 2 years. Instead of getting traffic citations, Cinema received negative marks through the department's internal points system. Ultimately, he lost 3 days' pay and had to go to remedial training.
That's like a long weekend.
But the Denver Police Department defends its internal use of fines, saying officers involved in preventative accidents actually pay more than a citizen would for the same offense.
We're able to address punishment and correct the behavior, hopefully, quickly without having to wait for a cumbersome court process to come to a conclusion.
Since 2011, Denver officers were disciplined 308 times for wrecking cars, 136 cases of careless driving, 106 issues with backing, 21 incidents of driving too fast for conditions. Denver PD says those numbers are in line with the amount of risky driving officers do.
If you look over time, that's not an unusual spike compared to where we usually are, but that doesn't mean that we're not attempting currently to bring those numbers down.
For comparison, Fox 31 Denver asked several other major law enforcement agencies for their lists of preventable accidents. Since 2011, Adams County deputies dented and smashed their way to 115. Aurora PD, about 80. Colorado State troopers damaged their cars or injured a citizen 219 times. Some cases are embarrassing, like being distracted by a drink that spilled or accidentally firing a shot through the seat and the floorboard.
34, I'll be out of Broadway Canyon. Can I get a supervisor?
Other incidents, like when this Boulder police officer failed to see a young woman on her bicycle, are far more serious.
And then I realized I'm up on the roof of a car. I had no idea what hit me.
21-year-old Satara Tucker was riding her bicycle through a green light along a well-lit Boulder street when a police cruiser cut her off. She didn't know it until we showed her. There was videotape of the officer's mistake.
I have nothing against the cop who hit me. Just how they handled it was horrible.
Tucker is upset because she has unpaid medical bills from the accident. Her back, leg, and hip still hurt, but perhaps most painful of all, after sending Tucker flying over the police car's hood and onto the concrete, the Boulder Police Department didn't apologize. Instead, they issued Tucker a $50 citation for failing to have a light on her bike. At least the Boulder Police Department also cited the officer for failing to yield right-of-way to a pedestrian in the crosswalk. But I can tell you, based on a review of probably about 1,000 at-fault accidents involving police officers, it is rare, even in cases where citizens are badly injured, that the police departments issue the officers tickets. More than 1,000 flights a year leave Denver's airport while dangerous winds whip across the runway at speeds in excess of 30 miles per hour.
It's a critical event.
And in nearly all cases,
Apparently no wind shear alert.
pilots are departing without the tower offering a vital piece of weather information.
You're gambling with the life of the passenger.
Tower, looks like you have a plane go off of 3-4 right.
That lack of communication has already led to one disaster.
I can see the flames right now.
Will it take another before air traffic controllers heed the warning?
It makes me livid to think that they don't. There's no reason for them not to give it. None.
Good evening. I'm investigative reporter Chris Halsne. Due to the proximity to the Rocky Mountains, this airport is the frequent target of wildly unpredictable gusts of wind. Tower operators using a special wind sensor understand both the direction and speed of those gusts, but our investigation found that they rarely provide that information to pilots. Here's what a strong crosswind looks like up against a jet full of people. Passengers describe an uneasy feeling of floating, wobbling. And with the wind largely in charge, pilots often have to settle for a rough landing or takeoff.
If there's a heavy crosswind, we're actually taking off in a crab. We have cross controls in. That means we have the aileron down in one direction and the rudder in the other direction.
John Flurlage has been flying commercial airliners for decades. He says pilots are trained to adjust for known steady-state winds, but it's that frequent, unpredictable, and swirling crosswind gusts that make Denver especially challenging.
Always takeoff and landing are the most dangerous part of a flight. Close to the ground, that's where the plurality of accidents happen.
Continental 1404, Denver Tower. Tower, looks like you have a plane go off.
Accidents like the December 2008 fiery crash of Continental Flight 1404 out of Denver. 42 passengers were injured.
The plane was just vibrating so violently.
Joe Glasser survived the accident along with his wife Arlene.
You know, you relive an incident like that over and over and over again, and frankly, it never leaves you. I can close my eyes right now and see the entire incident all over in my head, and it's just as vivid as it was that day.
Federal investigators found a strong and gusty crosswind forced the Boeing 737 to swerve off Denver's main north-south runway and catch fire, and that air traffic control did not disseminate key available wind information to pilots. However, in the 6 years since this crash, Fox 31 Denver discovered that same mistake continues to be made over and over. We compiled wind data for every hour of every day since the Continental crash and compared it to about 1.2 million flight departures in that same time period. If a jet took off in winds exceeding 27 knots or about 31 miles per hour, we considered that a significant wind event. We identified at least 8,130 flights leaving DIA in those conditions nearly identical to the night 1404 crashed.
It's just a matter of time. It's a mathematical certainty. At some point, the Continental 1404 accident will reoccur. It'll happen again.
Aviation attorney and pilot Bruce Lambert knows more than just about anybody about the Continental crash, representing both the pilot and some passengers injured aboard the flight. We shared with him our exclusive research into just how often flight controllers have been green-lighting takeoffs at DIA in dangerous wind conditions without providing pilots accurate, critically important weather information.
It is absolutely incredible to me, and to my knowledge, it's one of the only airports in the country that does not give gust information.
Not all of the 8,000 plus takeoffs we data mapped occurred in direct crosswinds, but many did.
We just got hit by a major microburst here at the tower.
And after listening to dozens of hours of flight tower recordings made during those windy events, it was obvious the FAA-run tower rarely provides pilots wind gust information.
Gusts are a critical thing to know about. So if they're not reporting gusts or not reporting gusts accurate winds for the runway on which you're landing, could lead to a dangerous situation.
Since 2010, the National Transportation Safety Board has been imploring the Denver Tower to start routinely issuing runway-specific wind gusts to departing aircraft, but still today, the FAA refuses.
Mistakes can be forgiven, but what do you learn from that mistake? If we learn something from this mistake and it's not being instituted, that's just stupidity.
It is going to happen someday, and if it happens because a controller knew or knows that the wind conditions are at a hazardous level and they're not giving that information to the pilot, how can a guy live with himself?
In direct response to this Fox 31 Denver investigation, the FAA has issued an airman's advisory warning all pilots flying out of Denver that departure end wind does not display wind gust information. Airport wind is available upon pilot request. Lambert cannot understand the logic of why pilots have to ask for such basic safety information, especially after the FAA was forced to pay millions of dollars in damages to passengers, mostly because flight controllers could have, but didn't provide extreme wind gust readings to the Continental pilots.
To this day, every person that leaves DIA on a gusty, windy day is being put at risk because of nothing more than a stubborn decision by the FAA to do what they've always done.
The Glassers say their faith have given them the strength and courage to fly commercial airliners again, but hearing about this feud between the tower and pilots about something as vital as wind leaves them wondering, if this didn't affect safety changes, what will? An air traffic controller who currently works at DIA says gust information is easy for them to see. It's right near the top of their monitor. However, controllers have been told by FAA managers to keep that to themselves unless a pilot specifically asks for that gust reading. The broken concrete and rusty exposed rebar along the top of this bridge is mostly due to trucks using this underpass as a battering ram. While seasoned truck drivers skim beneath these railroad tracks with inches to spare, many others misread the low clearance dangers. Videotaping a truck smashing into this bridge wasn't that hard. On this day, it was Victor.
Police or city management have to do something.
Nearby business owners like YL tell us the trucks hammer into the tops and sides so often it's become a not so funny running joke.
I've seen it 3 times in one day, in the same day. This bridge got hit so many times, man, you wouldn't believe it.
Police say the beat-up highway underpass has been hit hard enough to close traffic at least 38 times in the past 5 years, all without a major repair. Biannual safety inspections show the York Street Railroad Bridge is one of the oldest in the state and it's in terrible shape. Recent inspector observations include ends of slab have been hit numerous times, ripping out longitudinal rebars. And concrete piles are heavily deteriorated and one is missing. The Department of Transportation first labeled this bridge structurally deficient a decade ago. The deck and superstructure score a 4 out of a possible 10.
I've thought about that numerous times, that one of these days it's going to go.
Carla Hampshire owns M&O Propane. She watches train cars full of hazardous materials like butane, diesel fuel, and oil stress the faltering bridge all day long and wonders.
One of these days that whole bridge is just going to go. And I hope I'm not here when that happens.
It's not such a crazy notion, at least not to Hampshire. She's seen the news. 47 people killed when train cars full of crude oil exploded in a Quebec, Canada derailment last year. and panic caused by the derailment of an ethanol-carrying train in Illinois in 2009.
Nobody wants to take responsibility. The railroad says it's the state's problem, the state says it's the railroad problem. And I don't know who's there to fix it.
Hampshire says unless this bridge gets repaired, Denver could easily be next.
We checked, and it's the Colorado Department of Transportation which is responsible for fixing or replacing this deficient bridge. But coming up in about 20 minutes in this newscast, why CDOT says they have to take a triage approach to these multi-million-dollar problems. And if you think this bridge is bad, wait till you see our worst 25 railroad bridges in Colorado. Reporting along the Denver-Commerce City line, Chris Halsne, Fox 31 Denver.